Admit. No. Hey guys. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I don't know if Mara's gonna be on or not. Looks like there's a couple more people joining. How many do you guys typically have?
It really varies on the day. Sometimes it's like 5, sometimes it's like 13.
Okay. Good to see you again.
You too?
Did Mara let you know whether she was gonna be here or not? Okay, well, we don't need her. So have any of you had a transaction yet? Did you get your license finally?
Yes, I did get my license. No transactions yet though.
It takes time. I don't have video problems today, so that's good. Share screen. I move things on this all the time. Can you see my screen? Did that, and I lost the admitting room. Yeah. Well, you guys are on time, so how about we get started? . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . So, have any of you had an open house or anything yet? Anybody have any big wins for the last couple days?
Yeah, I did some open houses, excuse me, last weekend, and I have 2 more this weekend, and got some good leads for sure out of them. Several people that were not represented by anybody, so trying to get trying to get them to commit to a buyer's agreement. Not that they won't, it's just, their communication hasn't been great, or I don't know what the urgency is with them, but yeah, very, very positive.
Well, just follow up frequently, but not so frequently that they get mad at you. It's a fine line. Some
Right,
people follow up, some people don't.
right. Yeah.
But don't be afraid to keep following up. I worked with somebody I met at open house for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So, they'll start by looking. So they aren't going to just sign an agreement right away most of the time because they're not ready. But if you can offer them something of value, like home buyer class that you're teaching with a lender or something like that, it's a softer close, right? So you're not trying to get them to sign any documents. You're just trying to get them to come to a class, give you their information so they can come to the class. And so you guys know more about real estate than they do, trust me. Don't be afraid to do that, because we did home buyer classes for years. I have not seen anybody else in the waiting room either, so I am gonna go to the next slide. So we're gonna do make and receive offers. I'll tell you what always surprises me is when somebody doesn't call, doesn't text, doesn't ask any questions and sends me an offer, and I'm in the middle of presenting offers. So make sure you call the listing agent, find out what the seller needs. And I'm gonna move you so I'm not talking to the wrong spot. Find out what the seller needs. They might need to rent back for a month. I had a client that was selling and moving to Portugal. So they needed to finish getting all their paperwork with Portugal done, and they couldn't do that until they had their house sold because they were moving. They already had an apartment in Portugal. That part wasn't a problem, but they couldn't get their final paperwork to physically move yet. And so till they had this meeting and they were waiting for the meeting. So I think they needed 60 days to rent back. You can do that on a VA loan and an FHA loan, but you can't do that on a conventional loan. So a conventional loan wants them in the house within 30 days. So it's important to know the terms that are out there. If you've got somebody with cash, anything can go, right? They didn't need a long-term rental agreement, but they needed to get rid of the rest of everything they owned because they weren't shipping it over there. So it's important that you ask what they need, because a good listing agent's gonna follow up, call the lender, make sure they're approved, make sure they have if they have cash, make sure they have a document that shows they actually have the cash, and make sure that the transaction is gonna be as smooth as possible for their client. So some of the things that, as the market's switching from a buyer's market to from a seller's market to a buyer's market, the buyers actually have a little more power, but the sellers want to know it's going to happen, it's going to close. So the reputation of the realtor many times can be the difference. If everything's the same and you don't have a reputation of getting things done, you're not going to win. But if you can say, I've got everybody behind me and we're going to make this happen, you have to speak with enough authority that you can keep your clients calm, because when they go through the inspection period, things get a little dicey. So just make sure that you guys are doing all that. So when you're in negotiating. Now, I like to win, but I also know that in transactions, there's a fine line between winning and losing. And sometimes what you need for your client is more important than the price. Like my clients that were moving to Portugal, it was more important that they had time in their house than it was the price. Now, we had multiple offers on that house because we priced it at market, and they chose the highest cash offer because they had freedom. Okay. Wasn't necessarily the highest offer. There was a higher lender offer with a loan that was conventional, and it was a 1930s house. So, you know, there's going to be things that we find that we don't know about in all those older homes, especially with some of the insurance changes. So you get an old home like that, it could still have knob and tube wiring part that's never been disconnected. A lot of people will update that, but not everybody does, and that makes fire insurance harder to get. So you just need to know the things that are going to come up in the age of the home to make sure you're giving your buyers the best piece. But if you're representing the seller, you're trying to get them the best things for them, right? So there is a win-win, and that's what makes the buyer happy and the seller happy. And that's where the negotiation comes in between. So in the offer process, you have preparing for the offer, writing the offer, presenting the offer, receive and respond, okay? So I always call the listing agent to find out what the seller needs, because they might need possession for just a week. They might need possession for 2 weeks after close because they can't make the payment on their new home without the proceeds from this home. And it might be in a different title company. Okay, so it takes time, and you got to watch for all the federal holidays and things like that. So make sure you know, because the Federal Reserve Bank determines when the money's going to get released, okay, from the lender and from the seller. So you have to have those funds to be able to close the next transaction. So make sure you're looking ahead, and if you do all the paperwork, then the other person doesn't have to do the paperwork. So if you're getting it, the less work somebody has to do sometimes will make the difference between choosing your offer and choosing someone else's. Does that make sense? So this isn't my quote. I like to think of sales as the ability to gracefully persuade, not manipulate a person or persons into a win-win situation. Sometimes you have to, if you have a high D on the DISC personality test, they like to win and they just want to get it done. So depending on who you're working with, you need to be able to talk their language. And sometimes to win, you have to give in a little bit up front. So in the offer process, all offers in Oregon have to be done with a written offer. So I get all these people that say, hey, will you do this? Will you do that? Will you do this? Will you do that? And I'm going, I need a written offer. I don't need you just asking me off the cuff questions, because it's got to make sense for my client, and the whole offer has to make sense, not just parts of it. So you're not giving me the whole offer. Give me the whole offer, and I'll present it to my seller. But the more important question to ask would be, how many offers do you have? How much time do you need to respond? So I do a lot of probate stuff too. And sometimes it takes time to get the response from somebody. Attorneys don't work on the weekends. So I'm not going to get a response on Sunday from an attorney. They're going to wait till Monday. So it's important to make sure you give the person the amount of time they need. Pressuring them to get it done in your client's timeline is not going to make an attorney return a phone call on a Sunday. Okay, it's just not going to happen. And if I'm dealing with 4 or 5 heirs, they've got to have
Did we lose her?
I think so.
Yeah. I know with the new building in Salem that they've had a lot of connectivity like issues.
I'm trying. Caitlin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we lost internet and I think I got it back up. I mean, it's really dark and raining out here. Can you still see my screen?
No.
Is everybody else still here? Can you all hear me? I'm gonna ask you just to go to your workbook and I'll keep going through the slides on my screen. I can't get it to connect, but I'll keep trying. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Thunder and lightning doesn't help. So even if they change something minor, that's gonna be a counter offer in your offer. You don't have a choice about that. I think I got everybody still though. But don't blindside them by sending them something without contacting them first. I mean, when you look in your email, if after you're done presenting offers and you have one that just popped in, that's kind of weird. And it happens. It's happened to me on more than one occasion, just because they didn't take the time to call or even text. They didn't send anything. They just sent the offer. So that's never good. So when you prepare to write an offer, I mean, one, you're asking, is the property still available? If they've got offers out there and they're just waiting for a couple signatures for a minor counter, it's going to happen, and they're probably not going to stop it unless you have something super good that you're offering. But they can't put the person into two offers at the same time. So it's super important that you make sure that they aren't in the middle of accepting an offer, because like one of my clients just signed part of the paperwork and the other one hasn't signed it. She won't sign it till her ex-husband signs it. So divorces aren't fun. Don't do them either. But build rapport with the listing agent. I always double check with the lender that they're pre-approved and they've been more than automated underwriting. Because automated underwriting will check if there's anything that's there, but it doesn't go deep into it like the underwriter does. So you want to make sure that you know that the person's really gone through underwriting. I also have my lenders will call and tell them that they have everything, that they're good, and they reach out to the listing agent, and it helps me get my offers accepted. All my lenders are local. I don't use anybody that does online, because I want to know that the paperwork's all been reviewed and submitted. So it's super important that you guys take that time to make sure that happens. Making sure we still got everybody. Ask them how much activity they've had. You know, I've had stuff sit on the market. I had one sit on the market for a while. My clients finally dropped at 5,000. And then we have multiple offers. And people go, well, how could you have multiple offers all of a sudden? It happens all the time. It really does. So inquire about other offers on the property. For the most part, unless the seller gives them information, gives them permission to share the information, they can't share any of the information. It's all confidential. They can tell you how many offers there are. They can tell you if a transaction fell apart, if there's anything major on the property. The one that had just recently closed that had the multiple offers at the end, my clients had fixed everything that was in the original offer. The buyer got cold feet and walked away when they saw their payment. So make sure your clients understand how much their payment's going to be, because we don't have 3% interest rates anymore. We're at 6%, but it's better than 7%. Ask questions about the seller's motivation. What are, are they, what do they want? And produce a comparative market analysis, especially when you're competing, because you want to know that the house is going to appraise. It's important to know in multiple offers that what you're offering is going to appraise if you have a lender. So make sure you do that. Review the multiple listing and the tax records. Obtain seller's disclosure statements. Most people put them out on the MLS, but not everybody does. So if you don't have that, try and get it. I don't worry real bad about the disclosures until we have the offer accepted. But if there's something in the disclosures that are online, like they have a homeowners association, your client might not want a homeowners association. So make sure you go over that with them so they know what they're getting into. Is there any ahas over that? Any questions? Okay, I'll keep going. So when you write the offer, price and terms, seller's disclosure, any conveyances that go with the property. If you're doing in-town stuff, you still might have some city access points that have an easement onto the property. If you know that, you need to disclose that to your buyer. Earnest money typically is around 1% of the selling price, but I've had people put a higher amount because they wanted seller to take them seriously. Due diligence is an inspection period. I personally have never bought a house without an inspection, and I recommend it to all my clients. So don't, make sure you have an inspection and make sure you leave enough time for the seller to accept. So I had somebody that sent me an offer that was expired before I even received it because their buyer didn't sign the paperwork when they thought they were going to. So make sure your offer is not expired when the agent gets it. If it is, do an addendum to extend it to something reasonable so they can present it. Financing terms. When you're reviewing an offer with a seller, they always say cash is king, but cash doesn't always win. But cash is easier than a VA loan. Because the VA appraiser can call almost anything. We had to tear down a shed on the property before we could close because it was leaning. So VA is going to be harder. It goes cash, conventional, FHA, then VA as far as ease. And on VA and on USDA, USDA has some interesting things. So if you're writing an offer in a small town outside of Portland or Salem or any of the major towns, USDA doesn't allow barns. So if there's a barn on the property, it's not going to qualify for that loan. It's important to understand that before you try to go in with a zero down loan, that it's getting lots of eyes on it because it gets all the eyes from the appraiser and the home inspector, but it gets it from USDA as well. So it's got to meet all the criteria. You want a buyer pre-approval letter. I want a buyer qualification letter. I don't want it just to say they're pre-approved. Because a pre-approval is I don't have to have all the documents through underwriting. Okay. And there's lenders out there, like two of my favorite lenders manually underwrite them before they give the letter. And that makes it just, all that you need is the paperwork for the house at that point. Closing date needs to be reasonable for the seller to be able to pack up and move. If they're already out of the house, hey, great, you can have closing and possession same day. Simple. Home warranty. The home warranty, if there's something major in the house that's older, like a furnace might be older. In my house, we've replaced the furnace, the plumbing, the roof. The only thing that we have left is the hot water heater. And somebody told me, they go, we have a really old hot water heater. And I said, it's not broken. I'm not replacing it. But I had a lender that was that did loans for like contractors, and they do it off the bank statements. They required it on one. So you never know what's going to pop up on lender qualifications. Repair limits. If you're asking for your fees, the buyer's closing costs for their loan fees, there's limits on the loans on how much can be accepted. Typically, FHA will allow up to 6%, VA 3 to 6%. You got to make sure all those fees totaled together are less than that. Conventional is only 3%. So your client might have a conventional loan, but which makes them more competitive as far as the tiers in the order, but if they need 6%, it's not gonna work. So make sure you verify that with the lender, that the amount that they're asking for closing costs is a number that's okay. Any special clauses, like if it's got well or septic or things like that, you're gonna have a special form that you have to add. Does all that make sense?
Can you repeat the 6% thing one more time?
Pardon?
Can you repeat the contingency about the 6% thing the lender has?
The 6%. So if you've got your closing costs for the lender, FHA and VA allow up to 6%. I don't remember what USDA's is. I haven't done a USDA in quite a while, so I don't know the current on those, but I would assume it would be close to 6%. But that includes your fee, the buyer's closing cost fee that they're asking for. So you got to make sure you have it all calculated in there. Okay. So if you're asking 3% or 2.5% from your buyer, and they're asking for 3% on lender credit because they don't have all the cash, or they see some repairs they feel they need to do, and they want to save as much cash as possible, you need to make sure that the lender's okay with that dollar amount.
So you're saying 6% of what number?
The sales price.
Okay, that's not.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Is that before or after the percentage, the 1% down? Or is that the total purchase price?
It's the total purchase price.
Okay.
The 1% down is the earnest money, and earnest money is part of their money to close. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Now, if you see a bunch of repairs that are going to be needed on the house, sometimes we'll do closing costs in lieu of repairs. So you need to have room in there for that. Okay, so if they want to complete, if it's something they just want and not something that's needed, so they have leaky pipes and it's FHA, you're gonna have to fix that. But if it's the carpet's dated, but it's still functional, that doesn't have to be done. That's because they want it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Buyers are going to want to update the house to make it their own, but they're going to have to pay for some of that. Usually the price would be reflected in something that's very dated. So they're not going to have a low price and have all those costs in there. Review your contract. Make sure you filled everything in, even if it says, if it's zero, if it's blank, it's zero. It makes it look like you actually took the time to review your contract. And the listing agent will know that. They'll know you understand to be detail oriented. Double check your buyer understands the contract. Go over it with them. What I do, especially with first time home buyers on their very first offer, is we go over the whole contract. Before I do it over Zoom so they can ask questions, we can go over every piece. They know and understand what they're signing. And then if that one gets rejected on the next one, I will just go over all the detailed points that we're going over that we're doing that's different. Know what is essential in our area. So, there's some areas of Portland that have a lot of basements. You need to make sure that they aren't leaking when you're there. Know the standard or common terms for offers in your area.
What do you mean by common terms? Exactly.
Like the earnest money should be around 1%. That's a common term in our area. Some areas it might be 2%.
Okay.
Okay. Another common term is inspections within 10 days. If I'm doing acreage property, I want 15 days because I've got to inspect the septic, the well, and the house.
Okay.
And it takes time to do all those, and the well guys are usually out a week. So are the septic guys. So it just takes longer to get those things done. I try to do everything on the same day, but you can't always do that. And make sure your buyers come to their inspection because it's their time to really get to know their house. And the inspector will tell them about things about the house. So, you need to watch this, but it's okay. Like if there's some moss on the roof, I try to get that off before we even list it because it just makes it a lot easier. Insurance guys don't like moss on the roof, and they usually send someone out to look at it before they insure it. So it's just easier to take care of that. If you have an FHA or VA offer, everything needs to be trimmed. All the brush needs to be trimmed back from the siding, or they're going to call that. And it's just good to take care of that all up front, although the bushes look better if they haven't just been recently trimmed. So, but if you're getting a house ready, just take care of that up front. Trim everything back so you don't have any issues in the closing process.
How much of that is the agent responsible for? Because like I've done an open house and the house was kind of like dirty and there was still food in the refrigerator but everybody's moved out.
Well, the agent's not responsible for it, but the seller is. So like I had a seller that just drug their feet on taking all the old paint cans to the recycling center. Because when you move, the movers won't do any hazardous materials. That's everything that you use for cleaning compounds too. So it's not just the paint. It's any weed killer, anything like that. They aren't going to take it. It's not going to go in their truck. So it needs to be removed. And I can tell you that I've loaded up my truck more than once. I've loaded up my truck because they didn't have enough people loading their own trucks. So, your clients have a contractual time they're supposed to be out of the house. And they don't always know how long it takes to move. Any ahas? So when you present the offer, like I said, don't just send it to their inbox. Double check all the documents, make sure all the initial spots have been signed. Follow the instructions that the listing agent has. Label all documents clearly. Order the documents. I like to create a summary of my offer. And most of the software we have has that in it. You can just add the summary to the front cover and it doesn't need to be initialed by anybody, but it gives all the closing dates because each set of documents has everything in a different spot. So if you're presenting multiple offers, you got to know all those different things. Now, I believe they made it okay for people to send the offer letter, but I will tell you, if I've got multiple offers, they don't see that letter until we're going over at the end. Because I want my clients to make a smart choice for themselves. So they made it illegal for a while, and I think they just let it come back in. Double check that with the principal broker. But notify the listing agent that everything's coming, but all the pertinent information they need to know. Now, I still will read through the document because they don't always put everything in there. And it's important to make sure, you know, if you're asking for a home warranty, if you're asking for a long inspection period, those all play into it because, you know, even after your inspection, something can break. And things happen during transactions, whether we want them to or not. I mean, they happen. There was a house I had under contract, and my clients really liked it. The sewer system from that area had a pump to another level. The pump broke and it flooded this house. My clients backed out. They didn't want to deal with that the rest of their lives. So it's important to know that things can happen, and it's good for your client to terminate a transaction for the wrong house. We had somebody that walked into the house and there was cracks all over the wall, and she fell in love with this house. And we had looked at a lot of houses with this couple, and he said, write it up. And I'm going, this house has a lot of problems. And the inspector walked into the crawl space and the whole foundation was sinking into the ground. And that's why all the cracks. And he told our clients when he came out of the crawl space, you guys need to run. We told them that up front. They could have saved $500 on an inspection. They didn't buy the house. But I have had somebody buy a house just because they liked it that much. But notify the listing agent when you're sending the documents, add all the documents to command, and consult with your buyer. So if your buyer's got to give their lender permission to talk to you and the other agent, even though it's in the contract. So if they want to win, you need to have their permission. Any ahas? Any more questions?
Actually, I have a question on, so I noticed that in command that some documents are not required. Of those, which ones would you recommend that you do or don't worry about doing them?
Well, I do all the I do more of the little disclosures, especially about the different kinds of forms, because the Oregon Realtor Association forms haven't been through the court system much, and people are just starting to use them in our area, but most everybody's still requiring OREF. So will I not present an offer? But I want my clients to make sure they understand why we're choosing a set of documents over another. So I do all of those addendum, but you may not, you know, if you're buying a house in town, you aren't going to have a well test. There's once in a great while, you'll find a house that's on a well in town, but not very often. So you probably aren't going to need that form, and you're probably not going to need a septic form on a house in town. But if you're doing a house out in the country, you're probably going to need a septic form, and it's probably going to need. That's why they're not all required. If the house is built after 1978, you don't need the lead-based paint form. So they're required if the house is technically not 1978, but they usually make us turn it in if it's 1978. So I just fill out the form. So if the house is 78, I always fill it out, even though I know it's not required. It depends on the background of the exact principal broker reviewing it on whether or not they're going to make it required. And you're dealing with two different companies most of the time. So one company might require it and one company might not. I'd probably do the lead-based paint if it was 1978 or older. I wouldn't do the lead-based paint if it's 1979 or newer. Wouldn't even do it. There's no need to. It's a waste of paper and time. So for the most part, you might not have a counter offer. You know, they might accept the offer as written. So it doesn't happen very often, but I've seen it happen. I've had somebody say, I only want to take cash offers. Well, That may or may not be possible, but there's been a lot of cash transactions lately. So the last couple of years, there's been more cash transactions than I've seen in a long time. So if you got a senior that's downsizing, they might already have the cash. So you never know.
Those are the only, I've only had 3 transactions and they've all been cash.
But you've been lucky.
Yeah, which scares me because I wonder what's going to happen when I do my next one.
Well, you're going to have an appraisal. And appraisers are being a little more cautious on over asking price stuff. So, because the market, the higher end of market's coming down, the lower end market's still going up. So it kind of depends on what price range your house is in, whether you're going to have an issue. But that's why you do the market analysis, even on a buyer offer, just to see if you're going to have an issue. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I like that you say that because I did that and then I was told, "Oh, you don't need to do that. The selling list agent has done that. Why are you wasting your time?"
Because some people price them over market and the market has changed. If they've had the house on the market for 6 months, the market's changing. It's constantly changing. It's never the same. And you're representing your buyer.
Exactly. I like that.
Okay. I have, the only time I have not done one is when I knew the pricing was right and we needed to save a little time. But I've done it on the back end to prove it to my clients.
Sweet. Thanks for
So,
that affirmation. I love it.
I mean, if you're representing the buyer, you owe the due diligence to make sure that that offer is not too high. Okay, that they're not overpaying for the house. Now, in multiple offer situations and the price keeps going up, there is a point. I had in 2020, one of the agents on my team underpriced a house. I had 27 offers. I did not take the highest offer. The highest offer was a USDA, and they wanted all their closing costs, so they plopped that on top plus more to try and win. I knew that house wouldn't appraise. There
Yeah.
is no way that house would appraise for that price. So we didn't take that offer.
Smart.
We took the highest, I think we took the highest conventional offer on that one. Because they're a little more lenient. And if you have all those offers, you can prove that you had the right price.
Yeah.
So make sure your offer is complete. Confirm receipt of the offer. So if you sent an offer and they don't confirm receipt, you need to double check they actually got it. You might have mistyped something and it didn't get into their inbox. It might have gone to their spam folder. It's your duty to make sure they got your offer, not theirs to happenstance find it. Okay. So call them, text them, and double check that you got the email address correct. Get the offer to the seller in a timely manner. Like I said, I had somebody that their client didn't sign it, and it came to me, it was expired before I even could present it. So make sure you give enough time that if your clients are slow at signing.
In that case, did you send it back and request a new one, or what do you do in that case?
I asked her to send an addendum, which
Okay.
she never did.
Oh,
And in the meantime, I got another offer that was better and we took it.
okay.
So you might lose just because you didn't take the time. Call the lender if allowed in our area. Our contracts state that you're allowed to talk to the lender. So them giving you an offer gives you permission to talk to the lender. Okay. I do a net sheet for all my sellers too. So if you're representing the seller, do a net sheet. If you use like the Fidelity or the Tycor app, it's really close on everything except for the payoff, the interest. It assumes interest was paid on the first, so it's always wrong. add an extra month's worth of interest and you'll be closer. A lot of times the buyer wants to FHA and VA, they want to close as close to the end of the month as you can. But there's another reason for it. After the 15th, most lenders allow the buyer to have a whole month before they have to pay a payment. So, if you put a closing date of the 1st and your clients are reeling from all the moving expenses, they might not have the payment for a month. So don't put them in jeopardy by not allowing them the extra time to get another paycheck. So you want to do it from the 15th to the end of the month so that they don't have a payment that first month. Because they pay interest in arrears. So they're paying the interest up front. Does that make sense? When you're reviewing offers, when I'm reviewing offers, if I have a question or if I've got competing offers and one is waiving the inspection, it's just for their own peace of mind. If I've got another one that's a better offer, I'm going to ask them the same question. So provide as much information as you can, but don't take away your client's ability to do an inspection. So I have a I do a net sheet for the seller for each one, and if I have multiple offers, I do a spreadsheet so we can compare them. And I number what I would think is the best offer to the worst. So create the offer in Command. I like putting my clients in Command when I put them under a buyer broker rep too. Because you got to submit everything within 3 days to the principal broker no matter what. But it's a good way you can set up all your touch points around everything in Command if you want. I use by referral only, so it's very similar in how they work. But we will send a welcome letter, welcome to our welcome into our client. These are the services we provide, and we're happy to have you on our team. Because we want our clients to feel welcome. But the more things you have on them, phone number, address, neighborhoods they're interested in, the better. Because your database health is important. And this time of year, if you're updating your list, everybody send a holiday card or a Thanksgiving. I send out Thanksgiving cards because I think Thanksgiving's the best holiday in the world. It's all about thankfulness. So be different, but stay in touch. It's a good time to review your database. Make sure you have everything. Call people up, wish them happy Thanksgiving.
Did you create your own welcome letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when we have our initial consultation, and I don't show anybody houses unless I'm at an open house. I don't just show them houses unless I have them under contract, and that's we do the initial consultation. That's when we put them under contract. So if they want out of it, I let them out of it. I mean, I'm not a hard ass on it, but you owe some duties to them as a realtor, and under Oregon law now you have to have them under contract. So don't play games at your license. So the seller can counter in one of 3 different ways, but it's important most of the time. I mean, ask the agent. Let's say you have a buyer and their house is under contract with escrow at Fidelity, and the listing agent wants it at IgniteL. Tell them, we're trying to close 2 transactions simultaneously. Is your client okay with this other one? Now, I've had a client that had a friend at IgniteL and they wanted to use that friend no matter what. So the answer would be no. But then you're gonna have to add in a couple days to get the money to close this transaction. So business days. So you have to make sure that they can close the transaction. If it's got to go from IgniteL to Fidelity or Fidelity to IgniteL, it's most of the time buyers and sellers don't care, but every now and then they're related to somebody that works at one of those companies. Or they have a really close friend that's an escrow officer and they want their friend to do the work. It's not worth fighting for. So when the seller sends a counter, go over the counter offer. Ask them if there's something else your client wants. I've had buyers say we got to be in by this date because the kids start school. The reality is they don't have to be in by that date. Something can go wrong anywhere in the transaction and it'll push the date. The lender might have something come up in underwriting or they bought a car. Tell your friends and your clients not to buy anything on time that depletes their assets that they provided or opens another line of credit. It might cost them their house. And I've had it happen to somebody that I told that to 5 times. So don't be surprised by all of that. It happens. So does anybody want to practice giving an offer to somebody? Do you want me to put you into groups where you can do it where you're not intimidated by me?
I'll try it.
Okay.
So I'm putting in an offer, is that correct?
You're putting in an offer. I'm the listing agent.
Okay.
Ring, ring.
I apologize. It's Tanya still? That is
I'm
the right
Dana.
name?
I'm Dana.
Dana?
I'm
Okay.
turned in as Tanya to do the class so they can record it.
All right. Sorry, Dana. All right. Try that again.
Ring, ring.
Hello, this is Senior. How may I help you?
Hi, Senior. This is Dana Burke. How are you?
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm good.
Hey, so I just wanted to let you know that I am putting an offer in on 923 Sunset Road.
Mm-hmm.
I will have it to you by the end of the day. Is there anything that your buyer is looking for or, that is a consideration?
Well, the seller, we've got to buy another house. So, if you're closing on a Friday, we might need till Monday to move.
Okay. I will keep that in mind and let my buyers know.
Okay.
Is there anything else that I need to do that you would like to see or that we can work better together?
Well, just make sure you include the occupy after close addendum so that we don't have any missing paperwork. It just makes it faster.
After close addendum you would like to have?
Yeah, the occupy after close addendum so that we have a couple days to close our transaction because sometimes the paperwork gets stuck somewhere. Okay.
All right, I will make sure you get that. If there's anything else you think about, please give me a call at this number and I will get back to you as soon as possible.
All right. Let me know when you actually send the offer. So I'm looking for it.
Will do. Thank you so much. Would you prefer a text or a call?
I don't care.
All right, I'll send you a text then. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
See, it's not that hard. Anybody else? All right. Any ahas? Did you guys learn anything?
Yes, did I have to do a addendum for staying in the house a little longer?
Yep. If there's occupancy before close, I would never let my seller let them come in before closing, because it's really hard to get them back out. But a seller that's trying to close a transaction, they aren't going to move without the money from that transaction to be able to get possession of their new house. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to need some overlap unless they've already left the house. Okay, that's about the only time that it would close simultaneously. And I've had on some estates, I've had to get a hold of as many as 8 people to negotiate that transaction. So, if it's an estate, they're going to need more times, and they should tell you that. But if you don't call them to find that out, you're not going to know. Okay. But anytime you see the estate of somebody, ask them how many sellers there are and if they need extra time, because then it shows that you are more educated and you know that there may be an issue there.
And that's would be a trustee of so-and-so. Is that correct? Is that the same way?
That's not the same thing. It could somebody that has a trust, the successor trustee might only be one person, but it might also be they gotta talk to all the family to make sure everybody's okay with the sale. And on some estates, if it's going through probate, the judge might have to sign off on it as well. So it's important to make sure you have enough time in there for that. You need at least 30 days.
And you would get that information from the agent, or is that in the RMLS?
If it says it's an estate sale somewhere in there, you know already that there's something going on. Okay, so just ask them if you need extra time they're supposed to put it in the MLS, but I would tell you that there's a lot of agents that don't put everything in the MLS. So don't rely 100% on the MLS. Ask questions. So if it's a trustee, you might ask if it's an estate, but it may not be. I mean, if I were to sell properties, it may or may not be.
Okay.
So hopefully I've provided you some chance of being a little more expert than the average agent going out there.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
So I'm sure you've ran into this already, but you have a close date and then you have a take possession time frame if there's an addendum where they need some extra time. But what happens and who handles it if you're ready to take possession and the sellers do not have their belongings out of there and they need extra time? I'm sure that happens all the time.
It happens all the time, and it's usually a big deal every single time. So, like I told you, I've gone to check on somebody that I didn't think would have it done, and sure as shit, they didn't. And so we've gone and loaded up our truck and helped them.
Okay, so what happens if it's more than just a truck? And are you generally trying to talk with the other agent about this?
I'm always talking with the other agent. I mean, on that one we had one where we had the buyer and they hadn't even started packing at the time of possession. So it becomes a big deal. They're going to have to pay because legally they're supposed to be out. It's not their house anymore.
Right. Okay.
But it's always a big deal. And if you have any inkling, I mean, double check with your client and say, remember, you have to be out of the house by 5 p.m. on this day. You need to have it more than once. And about a week ahead of closing, I would double check that they're getting stuff packed, because it takes a lot longer to pack than people think it does.
Would you ever fill an addendum and take it to them and say, okay, look, are you sure you're gonna be out by this date? And if they're like hesitant, then do you have them sign an addendum that they're willing to pay the extra if they're not out by that date?
I would just tell them that they're gonna be in breach of contract, and whatever it costs the buyer on the other end, they could be sued for.
Okay,
So you need to tell them that. They legally will not have the right to be in that property as of the possession time. Now, I've had somebody that ended up in the hospital, and we've had to work through that too. So it's hard to move when you're in the hospital. But you have to work through it. And each scenario is going to have a different outcome. If you don't have somebody that's right there ready to get in, the buyer's always excited and wants to get in. So if you have any inkling that there's an issue ahead of time, like your seller ends up in the hospital, call them up and say, hey, my seller's in the hospital. We're going to need more time to get out. How can we work through this? Just be upfront. Don't spring it on them at closing. Bring it on them ahead of time if you can. Does that make sense? As soon as you know, let the other agent know there's a problem. But it happens. It happens. It happens more often than I'd like to see. But like I said, with that one client, I mean, I'd gone over there 5 times trying to help them pack, and they weren't making any headway. And I finally just said, you have to be out of the house by 5. They ended up with stuff stored at the neighbor's house. We helped them load it. You know, I've got a bad back. I don't lift anything heavy. So it's not going to happen. I've had 6 back surgeries and I don't want to have a 7th. Any other questions?
Have you ever heard of liability? Like if you help them pack like you did, would there be a liability issue?
Yeah, their insurance would probably cover it, but most of it was kid stuff. It wasn't that big a deal. I wouldn't take the expensive stuff. So like all the tools we loaded in their truck. But I've also known those clients for a long time. But even in the transaction where the appraiser called the shed, I mean, we've gone over the weekend prior to closing to paint with primer just so we could close. There's liability there. But everybody's got to agree. You can't just go do that. And we had to take down a shed. So the seller had to agree that we could tear down the shed. We did it in writing. Okay. When we had to paint, we had permission to go paint in writing.
Are those addendums you have your seller sign?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the buyer, both of them are going to have to sign it. It has to be okay. Because if, you know, they went and bought the cheapest paint they could find, so that's not going to match, right? So the seller had to be okay with that. And they just wanted to be able to get a house. It was their first house. And it was an old house. Now you get a free DocuSign account with KW. So make sure you have that active and you know how to use it before you have to write an offer. I encourage anybody I train to write 3 to 5 offers and have whoever's training them go over it to make sure you know what you're doing. Don't wait until you're with a client and you've never read the offer. You guys need to know it, and you need to be able to explain it. And you need to know how to use it. So even if you just send yourself a test offer to, they change everything all the time. So I re-record how to sign an offer. I've made up so many emails that it's hard to know which one I have and haven't used. But just to be able to record that in Zoom, you can do that and send it to your client in advance so they know what they're doing. Make everything easy for your client, but don't send them an offer and have them just sign it. They need to read it. And you need to go over it with them to protect yourself. They're signing a legal document. So my assignment to you guys is to go practice writing a couple offers so you're not afraid when you have to do it. And you know how to do it, and you know how to do it in command, so you turn it in on time, so you're not in violation of the law. And you guys are all young enough, you're probably way more techie than, when I started in real estate, we were handwriting offers, so just be glad you get to do it online now.
So we can actually do a test all the way through and put all the papers in through command and then just let them know that it's a test? Or do
Yeah,
you?
I would call it a test. I would put test transaction and your name and have one of the principal brokers review it.
Okay.
You can have Mara review it before you do it too, because you're in the productivity program. But either way, just do it. It's better to practice and learn something and know how to do it when you need to know. But, write up the house you're living in. But make sure it says test all over everything. Okay?
Yep.
We don't want somebody thinking an offer is being made. But make sure you have your 10 conversations, 10 contacts added, and 10 handwritten notes every day. Okay? We want you to be successful. And don't forget to double check that everybody is not in the do not call list. And enjoy this business because you're going to meet a lot of fun people. It's fun. There's nothing more exciting than buying a house. All right. You guys have any other questions?
I don't think so.
All right. If you have any questions, give me a call. I'm pretty easy to find. Dana Burke, BURK at Comcast.net. Or KW.com will work too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.